Darling. Hey, darling. You got a little something on your shirt. Carl snapped out of his ravine long enough to shrug his shoulders and smile up at the waitress before diving back into the best damn sloppy joe he'd ever tasted. It seems like he lost all sense of proper dining etiquette after his first bite, but it didn't faze her for a second. She'd seen that glassy-eyed gaze many times before. She tossed a few more napkins on the table and shuffled away to top off a customer's coffee. A little while later, Carl dipped a napkin in his water and dabbed at the greasy red splotch on his shirt. He did it more for the sake of appearance than anything else. The shirt was easily written off in his mind as a worthwhile sacrifice for discovering the best damn meal he'd ever had. Oh, darling, I don't think that's coming out, said the waitress with a motherly tone. He glanced at her name tag. Can I get one more to go, Nancy? Nancy smiled. Sure thing, sugar. The 3-hour drive home was almost unbearable. He kept glancing at the greasy paper bag in the passenger seat. Carl couldn't possibly eat another bite, but he really wanted to do so. All he really wanted to do was pull over and eat that sloppy joe. He wiped the escaping saliva off the side of his mouth and revved his car up to 15 miles per hour over the limit. Carl didn't even think about unpacking his car. He just grabbed the doggy bag and rushed into his house. Moments later, the paper bag lay in shreds beneath the dining table. He carefully peeled back the foil wrapping, revealing the monster of a sandwich within. The cold, concealed mess before him seemed to taste even better than the fresh one he had earlier. Its soggy 6-inch bun didn't dissuade him one bit. He devoured it quickly and wished he had another. The long drive between him and the only thing he cared about to eat anymore was beginning to weigh on him. He'd make the trip straight from work on Fridays and sit down in the booth to 2 delicious sloppy joes. 30 joes would make the long drive home with him, but eventually that wasn't enough to last him until the weekend. He was putting on so much weight, his girlfriend was always lecturing him about his eating habits. Carl, you've outgrown your clothes 4 times in 3 months. That's not healthy. Carl hated to admit it, but he knew something had to change. His new place was less than a mile from the diner, and his job at the only gas station in town gave him plenty of chances to eat before transactions. He felt bad about how he left things between him and his girlfriend, but the remorse didn't last long. They even displayed a framed picture of him in his booth at the diner, which he visited at least 3 times a day. 7 months since that first life-changing joe, and now he could finish off 4 of them at a time. 2 for breakfast, 3 or 4 for lunch, 4 for dinner, and of course, the occasional one as a snack. Carl didn't really think much of it anymore, other than that next sloppy joe. And he couldn't be happier. The world seemed so much easier to traverse now. Everything just fell into place once he slodged off all of the trappings of his old life and focused on what was really important to him. Hey, Nancy. What can I do for you, hon? Well, I've been wondering. You guys are out in the middle of nowhere, but you stay busy. How do you do it? Nothing to it, sugar. It's all because of our loyal customers. Years and years of regulars like yourself. Just look around at all the pictures on the walls. Oh, that reminds me. I'm sorry to tell you this, but Due to the rise in food costs, we have to start charging you $2 more per Joe. You okay with that? This most recent cost hike didn't seem to even register in Carl's mind. He just absent-mindedly said, "Uh-huh," as he looked around at the photos of heavily obese people all the way to the ceiling in some places. He looked at his picture hanging on the wall in his booth. It showed him sitting there with 2 sloppy joes on the table, his double chin accenting the wide smile on his face. He glanced down at his table and realized it was pushed as far as it could go to the other side of the booth to allow him to slide in and out. There wasn't enough room for even a child to sit on the other side, and his gut already started to press against the edge of the table. Carl took the picture off the wall, pushed past Nancy, and headed towards the bathroom. He stood before the mirror and compared himself to the photo. The guy in the photo was much bigger than he used to be before all the sloppy joes. But his image in the mirror looked like someone who had eaten both of those guys. Carl pinched the rolls of fat under his chin and jiggled them. He thought about how he used to view fat people as lazy, insecure, and even stupid. It seemed strange to him that since he started putting on weight, he never once saw himself that way. His gurgling stomach reminded him of the 4 joes being prepared for him right then in the kitchen. He suddenly felt sickeningly hungry. He came out of the bathroom and started to scrutinize the photos in the hallway. Nancy stepped up to him. "I wouldn't count them if I was you. Your order will be ready soon. Why don't you go sit down? I topped off your sweet tea." She began to walk away as Carl spoke up. "All the people in these photos, they're dead now, aren't they?" Nancy sighed and turned to face Carl. "Most of them. But don't you think about that, sweetheart. All our regulars are the happiest they have ever been right to the end." The ding-ding of the order bell yanked Carl from his depressing empathy. "I bet that's your Joe's right now, darling." She gave his fat shoulder a reassuring squeeze and headed over to the order-up window. He stood there at the hall entrance and looked out into the diner. The place was crowded as usual with familiar faces. He'd watch over the months bulk up like himself. Foot-long chili dogs, fried chicken with pasta, double bacon cheeseburgers, chicken and waffles, sloppy joes, and all sorts of other huge portions of artery-clogging foods were being devoured by the perfectly content customers. He wondered how many of them would succumb to heart failure within the year. Carl slid into his booth, sipped his sweet tea, and thought about the overwhelming contentness he'd felt since he'd moved to the little pass-through town. He hung his picture back on the wall as the thought of the photo it had replaced came to mind. He vaguely remembered Nancy telling him her name was Ginger and she loved their chicken and waffles. He recalled how happy she looked with a bottle of maple syrup in one hand and a fork in the other. Nancy showed up with 2 trays and expertly transferred his 4 joes to the table. "Let me just get you some extra napkins." Carl looked down at the 4 huge sloppy joes before him and uttered, "Happy right to the end, huh?" Nancy beamed a wide, toothy grin at him over her shoulder. "That's right, sugar." Carl patted the sides of his belly and expertly grabbed a joe with both hands. "Well then, tell the cook to get 1 more ready for me. I want to try to have 5 today." Finally, It was time. You had worked so hard and long at this. Days, months, years at a stupid, mindless job. Your body on automatic while your mind raced ahead of itself. You had painstakingly built up a horde of sick days until you had a full month ready to go. This was it. This was your moment to shine. Your agent had weaseled you a contract for a real novel. No more short stories for you. You were finally going to write the novel you had always dreamed of. Action, adventure, comedy, romance, all with a unique twist. No one had ever thought of it. You laid your fingers upon the keyboard ready to let loose. And then there was a knock on your door. You cursed. You knew you had put up a no solicitor sign. You hadn't ordered any package and you had blasted all your social media to make sure your friends knew to leave you alone. You decided to ignore it. Fingers raised upon the keys again, you let your mind wander. You had the perfect beginning. Start in media res, a gripping scene of high fantasy bleeding into a flashback. During the drag, again, there was a knock on your door. Heavier, more insistent. You glared at the door as if by force of will you would make them go away. No, thank you. I have at the office. You call out. Loud enough to be heard through the cheap wood of the door. Once again your fingers seek the home row of keys. No hunt and peck typing for you. No, you are master of your craft. The words will flow from your fingers like a fountain. No, a river. No, a veritable flood of knock, knock, knock. Loud enough it felt like your house shook. Loud enough it jarred your mind free from your fantasy worlds. You were out of your chair before you were thinking, crossing the living room in 3 great strides and throwing open the door. What? You yell, before you even look at the person before you. He is a small man, wider than he is tall. The word rotund springs to mind like a human version of a rubber bill. His face damn near gleams, chubby cheeks nearly spectacle, as he looks up at you with nothing but wonder in his eyes. Innocent eyes. It's you, he whispers. It's really you. You step back, startled at the tone of sheer devotion in his words and his clothing. Well, it's vintage, but it's too vintage. He looks like he stepped out of a 90s advertisement. His clothing, crisp and new, unworn since the day it was packaged. I'm sorry. Do I know you? You stutter out. No, of course not. How could you know me? I wasn't born when you... Well, no, you don't know me. But I know you. The whole world knows you. The greatest author to have ever lived. The one whose novels changed the very way the world thinks. He gushes, hands close to his chest. You're the best. I think you may have me confused with someone else. I haven't written any novels. Your hand is on the door, ready to close it. You haven't yet. And the way he says it makes you turn and look at him again. The way he seems too real. His skin, no trace of flush. His blue eyes, bluer than any you've ever seen. His hair perfectly gelled and slicked back with no hint of a product in it. I'm from the future. You finish, faintly. What kind of science fiction writer would you be if you couldn't recognize a time traveler? You step back, feeling a little faint. and your visitor takes this as an invitation to step in, a suitcase on wheels following after him. No, not wheels. You peer down and see that it has dozens of tiny feet. You sit down heavily in shock and raise an eyebrow at the stranger. He glances back at his luggage and his face splits in a joyful grin. An homage. It doesn't really need the feet, but I couldn't resist. I mean, I know you've barely begun, but, well, you must have so many questions. Not really, you say? I mean, yes, they are boiling up inside me, eager to know, but I've read enough time travel stories to know I shouldn't ask them. Well, maybe one. Why are you here? To the crux. Ah, yeah, to the crux. As ever so sentient and to the point. He fairly cackles with glee, rubbing chubby hands together. I am here for something very important. He kicks his suitcase gently. Nothing happens. He kicks it again, slightly harder this time. The lid pops open, revealing a good 30 hardcover novels. They are beautiful books. Your name blazing across the top of each one, but not blatantly. A subtle nod to you, worked into very art of the jacket art. And the art, the covers blend into each other, revealing a completely different picture. Takes as a whole than when individual. You gasp in delight, reaching out for them, only to be stopped by your visitor. I will. Can't you read them? Might chance too much. Our computers say that this much won't alter anything. What I need from you is a simple. His face lights up with glee, his eyes sparkling. I need your autograph on the inside pages, please. Of course, anything for a fan. He already has a pen ready for you as you lean forward and begin to open the covers for you. Thank you so much. This is so great of you. Can you make them out to Tim? Oh, thank you. Yes, this one is my favorite. The twist at the end. Everyone spent years wondering how you were going to get the progenist out of this, and then you did, and it was so masterful. I'm so glad I could meet you on today, of all days, when you begin your first masterpiece. He keeps up a steady stream of chatter as you sign each book, your eyes slightly glazed. Try not to take in too many details. Words on the inside of the dust jacket stand out here and there. Timothy Coulter's. Death of the world, despair, the darkness that dwells, and more. Just little hints of what's to come. You desperately try not to read them. You don't want to influence yourself. There you go. Signing the last one with a flourish. The front cover of this book is grazed with what seems like a homage to the sci-fi novels of the 60s, but with a beautiful man barely dressed on the front cover instead of a woman. You smile at him, a little strained. Is that all? Oh yes, that would be perfect. He smiles at you again, bobbing his head. Thank you for this. I'll leave you in peace now. And he turns on his heels, his little footed luggage trailing alongside him as he goes. The door closes behind him, but you don't see whether he did it or the luggage did. You stay seated for several minutes. That was amazing. phenomenal. Beyond belief, you slowly stand, snagging a soda from the fridge before you lazily make your way back to your computer. You are going to be an amazing writer. You swig your soda. A world-changing writer, according to the traveler. Another swig, and you set the can down on your desk. Your computer hasn't even had time to go to sleep. And that artwork, you never seen a writer who had connected his covers like that. The spines, sure, but the books themselves. The cursor blinks at you, almost accusatorily. You ignore it. You know you're going to be great. You saw your name spread across the entire series. So why can't you think of a single thing to write? It was dark, dreary. The rain clouds had moved on, but the water still dripped from the rooftops and skyscrapers. They fell and fell and fell, hypnotizing. Dangerous in the city where it's already so easy to be caught off guard. The hooded man approached me in the middle of the night as I was walking home from a business meeting that ran late. He said the words that tear at the soul, a question with infinite answers, but always a consistent result. I would grant you one wish. I laughed to myself. Crazy person or not, I knew how these stories always went. Make a wish, granted in a horrifying way. Wisher dies. Simple as that. I'd read The Monkey's Paw. I'd seen Wishmaster. I wouldn't be so carelessly stupid. I thought myself clever when I made my wish. So inconscious that any play on it would be downright foolish. I wish for $1. Had it been a crazy person, even he could have granted that wish, but it was no crazy person. I watched as the hooded man raised his hands, cupping them around the air, and slowly pulled a single dollar into reality as though out of a black hole. It gingerously floated down into my cupped hands. I looked at the bill. Incredible. And when I looked up, the man was gone. At home, I could do nothing but stare at the bill, unsure if I had truly seen what I thought I had. How could he have done it? Was he really a genie of some sort? Was this bill even real? Or was I just dreaming? I was sure I wasn't, but these weren't the questions that bothered me the most. The thought that racked my brain endlessly was, did I just waste a legitimate supernatural wish on a single dollar? I had figured if the man was the kind of genie I'd been brought up by horror stories to believe in, that he would have created some sort of hell for me in this wish. I figured the dollar would create minimal suffering at best, but I hadn't honestly expected the wish to come true anyway. I thought I was just humoring a crazy man, but nothing had happened. The supernatural being granted me my wish and went off. I could have had anything. I could have wished for billions instead of a single dollar. I could have wished for power to be superhuman. I could have wished for the fucking world peace. But I had $1. $1. I didn't sleep that night. Hell, I didn't sleep for the next week. How could I? Every missed opportunity, embarrassing moment in my past, anything I wanted to change just zipped through my mind. Every little annoyance echoed endlessly in my head. The woman in the cubicle next to me who kept smacking her gum, I could have wished for her mouth to shut. to the guy who kept bringing his work problems to me because he couldn't do them but still got paid more. I kind of wished for him to be fired. My boss, who did absolutely nothing but shit on me day in and day out, I could have wished him dead and had myself put in his place. Saturday I went to work. The only person who works Saturdays is my boss. That dumb shit. He never really worked. He went in to bang his secretary in empty offices while his wife was at home with her 2 kids. Believed he was at work making them a better life. She would have thanked me. The stapler on my desk would do the trick. I got the secretary coming out of my boss's office. The back end of the stapler gashed right into her temple. She was out cold. My boss, still buttoning his pants up, tried the old trick of yelling at me and telling me that I was fired to get me to stop advancing, but I could see the fear in his eyes. He couldn't even work his zipper right. I pushed him onto the desk, grabbed the fountain pen off the desk, and stabbed him in both of his eyes. This time, not so quick as to bash to the head. As he writhed in pain on the desk, I took my rightful seat at his desk. This is my wish. This is what it should have been, I thought. This was the happiest I'd been all week. It could have been the happiest I'd ever been, as far as I could remember. Someone must have heard the screaming on one of the lower floors. We were at the top of 16 stories. Maybe it was someone else's boss screwing his secretary too who heard us. Someone who didn't have the guts to murder for a better job. Whoever it was, I knew they had heard us because I can hear the faint sound of sirens outside the building on the street below. They probably wouldn't let me keep this job after what I'd done. I went up to the roof of the building, dragging the still twitching body of my former boss. When I got to the top, I found I was right. Cop cars littered the street. Those are what I aimed for when I tossed the body head first off the building. I hit one car dead on. My cop car was always where I thought that guy belonged anyway. I heard the SWAT team burst down the door open leading up to the roof. I pulled the dollar out of my pocket. My one wish. My one clever fucking wish. I tore it in half and jumped before the SWAT team could grab me. Spending life in a cell would only create more problems I couldn't wish away. As I fell towards the pavement below, I looked down. In the midst of police, no one seemed to notice a hooded man with glowing red eyes standing directly below me, arms wide as though he were about to catch me. My last thought before I showered the ground with my guts, my only clear thought in the entire past week, was that the devil was far more clever than I was. When we opened the body, there was nothing inside. No organs, no bones, no nothing. We were hard pressed to even explain how his skin retained its shape, instead of collapsing like an empty glove. We called the feds on that one. Way above our pay grade, we decided. A pair of feds were there in an hour. They didn't look like I expected. I thought they'd be wearing black suits, sunglasses, and earpieces. Instead, they were dressed in white lab coats and scrubs. It's our job to blend in and with the environment, the first Fed said. Can you show us the body? I did as I was asked, and we four stared down at the body. The feds, my technician, and I. There's something about the fluorescent lights of the morgue that makes the body look, well, unreal. Their flesh is pallid and dull, like one of those statues from Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. We're gonna have to call this in, the first vet said. The second one reached for his phone, but he never got it. The body lurched upright and seized the two agents by the throat. Slowly, the flesh of his Y incision began to knit back together. The feds reached for their guns, and I collapsed to the ground with my hand on my heart. The gunshots tore through the hollow flesh suit, but the creature continued to squeeze. The agents' faces turned red and then purple, their eyes bulging and shot with blood. For a moment, I thought that they were going to pop right off, but I didn't stay to find out. As I got my wits about me, and I bolted, smashing through the metal double doors and racing up the stairs to the first floor. My heart was pounding hard in my chest, racing to catch up with my breath, but my mind was focused on one thought only. Get as far away from this place as you can. I hoped my morgue technician had gone out too, but I didn't even look around. I just jumped in my car and with shaky hands thrust the key into the ignition. I peeled out of the lot and onto the main road, frantically swerving my way through traffic as I raced towards the police station. I didn't know what I'd just seen, but I knew I had to warn someone. I arrived at the police station, a babbling mess. They sat me in a room with a mirror in it and gave me some water. They told me to calm down, and there were murmurs behind my back about putting me in a psych ward for an overnight. As soon as I heard that, I knew I had to leave, but as I opened the door and stepped out into the hallway, I saw something that made me stop. 4 people had come into the station in lab coats: my technician, the feds, and the man who'd been on my table. I went out back and through the emergency exit. I managed to circle back to my car before I heard gunshots inside. That night I drove as far as a tank of gas would take me and checked into a motel under a fake name. Over the next few days I watched the news reports for the town, but they didn't report anything strange. Some nights I lie awake and I wonder what happened. Were the police able to put them down? Did the feds come in and cover it up? Whereas, is there a small town in America, Midwest, that's full of hollow people, just waiting for the chance to tear somebody open and hollow them out? I don't think I really want to... I don't know how to explain it, but the only thing I know is I'm not sure, and I want to find out.